Um, Welcome to this meeting of Powys on Action on the Climate Emergency. I'm very pleased to welcome this evening Ashley Collins from Powys Council, is the Waste and Recycling Manager from Powys Council, to give us a presentation on the work of the Waste and Recycling team. So thank you, Ashley, for coming along. And if we do the presentation, do you want to stop for questions, or should we keep all questions for the end? Ashley, would that suit you better?
It's probably easier, otherwise
Yeah,
we might be here all night if something
yeah. So
particularly
if
takes
and if
off. So
if
yeah,
as we go along, can you put questions that crop up in the chat? And then what we'll do is we'll just go through the questions that have been put in the chat first, and then we can hopefully pick up others that crop up afterwards as well. Okay, I'll pass across to you then, Ashley. You should be able to share screen if you're wanting to do that.
I will. Yeah, let me just make sure that.
That's it. We can see that.
Okay, so that's the presentation, not a picture of yourself. I've got two screens here, just making sure I'm doing
Right,
the
but
right
yes, we've
ones,
got the presentation. It's public engagement, it says at the top.
which is the last slide. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, well, thanks for the invite. It's always useful to come to these groups and explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, dispelling some of the myths and things like that, as well as sort of showing how we're trying to contribute to really what the Welsh Government's trying to do in terms of its waste and recycling and circular economy initiatives. What I thought I'd do is, I know you put a bit of a agenda for me to get together with, like HRC contracts, a hot topic, I know, and workplace recycling regs. Some of these will come up briefly in this, but what I wanted to do is go through the Powys Sustainable Resource Strategy, because that's kind of a new thing that we've launched this year. So I wanted to do the presentation that I've been doing on that and sort of giving you an overview of all the various things we're currently doing. And then after that, I'll go through those items in more detail. I don't have any presentation for it, but I'm more than happy to talk through it. And then if there's any questions on any of it, I'm more than happy to do that at the end. I have no idea how long it'll take because I haven't timed it, but I've got all night. So we'll just go through it and we'll see how we get on. So what I wanted to first of all do is just talk about the Power Sustainable Resource Strategy. Now, this is something that we launched earlier it was last year. It went to Cabinet in its draft form. The idea being that they approved it to go for an engagement exercise, so we could get some views from the public in terms of where we want to go. So there it is. I hope this isn't complete news to everyone, and I'd like to think that people in this group may have had a look, maybe even contributed and had their say on the website. I do hope so. It has actually finished now, unfortunately, but a month or so ago. So it's the Sustainable Resource Strategy. You'll notice there isn't the word waste in there, and that's for a very good reason. Is because we don't really deal with waste anymore. It's we're not trying to put lipstick on a pig here. It is still waste and recycling. We know that, but it is a resource, and everything we collect does get used for something. So of course, all the material we do recycle absolutely everything. If anyone reads in various different papers, whichever side they swing, they always seem to have stories about how there's no point in recycling, the council don't bother to recycling, it all ends up in landfill. That's just not true at all. Everything we collect for recycling is recycled or composted in terms of garden waste, and we have to prove that to NRW, and they're very, very stringent in terms of the data we provide, and this can all be seen either on the waste data flow website of NRW's, or even if you look on our website, it'll show you where everything goes. But yeah, so it's not waste. It's been well. I mean, there's the sort of the strap line for it. Together, we will reduce our environmental impact, lower our carbon footprint, move towards a sustainable circular economy where resources are valued and not discarded, and ensure a greener future for all. And the move to a circular economy is really key here. That we're not like I said, as I keep saying, we're not talking about waste, we're talking about resources. Even the stuff that we collect in the residual waste gets used for energy from waste, which, there's lots of debate about, whether energy from waste is a particularly good thing, and it might be worse than a coal-fired power station. However, you didn't have to get the coal, you've already got the waste, so it's got one up straight away there. We can also recycle what comes out the other end. It's called incinerator bottom ash, also take out any more metals. So 20% of what goes for energy from waste gets recycled as well, because incinerator bottom ash gets used in the building trade and various other sort of outlets for that. So everything we do is now a resource, and that's key to what we're doing. We did do this strategy in collaboration with Welsh Government. You may well have heard of RAP Cymru, which work on behalf of Welsh Government, and also a consultancy called Local Partnerships, which are actually owned by the UK Government. We've worked with them because it's really important that we're working together in Wales. And Wales, as again, you probably know, is second in the world for recycling, which is very, very impressive. And we're pretty much almost joint first, really. We're not far behind. I think it's Austria that's the one ahead of us. And again, that's a lot to do with local authorities all working very well together. I chair an All Wales Waste Managers group where we discuss all the various things that we're doing. We share problems, ideas, and all the rest of it, and work very closely with Welsh Government, NRW, and all these other stakeholders as well. And it works really well. It was excellent during COVID. I think Wales is the only authority who didn't suffer a dip in recycling, because we all got together straight away, like, let's not panic. I think one council did actually just chuck it all in the back of a dust cart, saying we can't do anything else, we can't recycle. Straight away it was like, well, where are you going to take it? If we all do that, there's not the capacity for it. And of course all the various people that we take material to are like saying, you can't do that, we need that material to function. So we carried on, we didn't stop doing anything, Powys, and our recycling rate didn't dip at all. But that just shows how we work together, all the 22 authorities. But going back to the Welsh Government, they have helped us a lot with this. We've had consultancy support, but Powys hasn't paid a penny for it. This has all come from Welsh Government. But the idea is that we work towards what Welsh Government want us to do, which is basically following their blueprint for collection, which we do with the separate curbside boxes, which maximises the quality of the material we collect. But what this strategy will also be is the first part of a business case to Welsh Government to try and unlock some capital so that we can improve some of our facilities. Abermuir facility is the only one that's up to speed, really. The other two do need a lot of work to be fit for purpose for the future, as well as complying with future NRW environmental permits. They're everything legal now. We're complying with the existing permits, but going forward, it needs a lot of capital investment, and we're working with Welsh Government to unlock some of that. Okay, the significant progress that we've already made. In 2013-14, 52.5%, and 22-23, 68.1%. We're looking this year possibly hitting the 70%. We don't quite know yet, because all the figures have got to come back from all the various off-takers, but we're in a target year of 70%, and we're going to be very, very close. We could potentially be fined if we don't reach it, but I don't think we will, because we're working very closely with Welsh Government, and this strategy shows that we're serious about getting to that 70% and maintaining it. Just to put it in context, I've been in the waste and recycling business in local authority for 31 years now, 17 of which have been in Powys. I started in Lemster District Council, and in those days there was a 3% recycling rate. And I remember in England where it's like, we've got to get to 25, and it's like, how on earth are we ever going to do that? That just seems like absolutely nothing now. And here we are, like nudging 70%. And I think overall in Wales it's about 67.5. So we're above average in Powys, but all the low hanging fruit's gone, and this is why we need a strategy to get that additional material. So we've done a lot of things to get there. The 3 weekly collections, reducing the residual, which means people are pretty much forced to use the curbside boxes because we collect them every week. Why wouldn't you use them? we've done a lot of stuff with the curbside collections. 15 years ago we didn't have those in place, so some places had survival bags, but we didn't have the boxes. It wasn't that easy for people. We had the bring sites, but that did need more effort for people to bring, as the name suggests, to those sites. The household recycling centres, they're now like well over 80% recycling. I think a lot of places in England are 40-50% at the most. So again, it shows that real effort's been put into all the different places, and we'll talk about HRCs later on, but they really are recycling centres. Now we've taken the W out of the HWRCs because there's very little waste now. It's all recycling. So in terms of the challenges, what have we got there? We've got the climate crisis on a global scale, the national, both UK and Wales. Wales is, as I said, way ahead of England, and they've got their various strategies. Beyond recycling is the latest one, which followed towards zero waste. They called it beyond recycling because it's just not all recycling anymore. Targets are one thing, but it's a lot easier to get to a target by recycling heavy stuff. But that kind of misses the point in a lot of ways, because we're now starting to look at the carbon impact of recycling various materials, and that's coming much more to the fore. Other challenges which will come on later on is like the workplace recycling regs, extended producer responsibility, deposit return schemes, emissions trading schemes, Wellbeing Act, all these kind of things, which I'll touch on in a bit. And on a local level, we've got the climate emergency declaration, which the council made a few years ago. I probably should know when they did, but it was a few years ago, and I know this cabinet is very keen to push on that agenda. And then there's the Sustainable Powys Initiative, which is a council-wide thing. In terms of waste and recycling, we're kind of in our various areas just because we have to, really. It's a big place. It's a lot of area to cover with collection vehicles, which is why we need the 3 transfer stations, which are Brecon Raider and Abermule, to provide an efficient service. Okay. This is kind of the aims of it, really. So working collaboratively with the community, we aim to achieve our sustainability goals and ensure a greener future for all. To be a carbon net zero council by 2030, that is going to be a challenge. We are looking at replacing our fleet with electric. At some point, there's a lot of work to be done to make sure that's effective. We do have one electric refuse collection vehicle. I like to say dust cart, but it sounds a bit mad, really, doesn't it? An electric dust cart, but it's what they used to be. And it does cover the area it needs to. The problem we have is with a diesel vehicle, it can come back into the yard, you can fill it up and go straight back out again. And that's a little harder to do with electric vehicles. So it needs a bit more planning, but I'm personally very keen to move towards an electric fleet. They do cost twice as much, but Welsh Government have been very good at funding that as well, or funding half of it, the additional cost, so it isn't such a big impact on the local authority. Obviously, we've got to minimise the overall amount of household waste produced. I think when I started 17 years ago, it was about 75,000 tonnes a year we dealt with, municipal waste, that is, as in the stuff dealt with by councils. That's down to about 53 or 54. So it has come down notably over the years, but obviously that's the best thing to do, is like not produce it in the first place, and then we don't have to, there's no carbon footprint at all then, is there? Increase the proportion of waste reused. This is quite an important one, and something we're doing more on the household recycling centres. We've got the facility with Circular Economy Mid Wales at Newtown, which has been very successful, and the new contractor is working with them again now and looking at expanding to all the other sites, because Newtown has kind of set the benchmark, really. We've got the facilities at the other site. Landrindle's a bit small, but we probably collect stuff there and then take it somewhere else for reuse. But certainly at Ystrad and Brecon, there's a building there ready to be used for reuse, and that's an integral part of the new contracts that we're doing. Reach and exceed the Welsh Government's 70% statutory recycling target. Well, we're within, grabbing distance of it, but as I said earlier, the low-hanging fruit's long been picked, and it's the hard stuff we're getting to now. Most people who are avid recyclers are and have been for years. It's getting to those other people, and I've got a slide later on that as well. Invest in our recycling and waste infrastructure to future-proof services. We've got to do that. We're going to have to collect more things. I mean, plastic film is something that's on the horizon, which is a bit of a pain to collect because it doesn't weigh much and takes up a lot of space. So we need to have the capacity to be able to store that. I don't know if anyone knows Abermule or has been there, but that's a very big shed. But if you ever go in it, there's not actually that much in there because we are not allowed to store very much because of the fire prevention and management plan. So there's various bays in there with a red line around it, and that's all we can store in that. And it has to just come in and go out. And we're taking loads out every day of almost every material. So there's very little stored, which does mean we need quite big places to be able to do this. We can't stack it up to the roof as we would have done previously. An efficient and cost-effective service, and that's very much come to the fore now with the extended producer responsibility, which I'll talk about shortly. Waste hierarchy, that governs everything we do, really. It's get it up to the top of that. So prevention, let's not have it at all. Reuse, clearly a good way. Then recycle. Recovery, that's energy from waste. And disposal is landfill. And very, very little goes to landfill. The only thing that ever would now, from what we collect, is if it was rejected for whatever reason at the energy from waste plant, which could be because there's like bulky stuff in it, or I don't know what, something that shouldn't be in there that they can't cope with through their shredders and the process. But I can't remember the last time that happened, to be honest. Okay, this is my favorite slide. This is a wheelie bin, as you can see, and it's a graphic image of a composition analysis that RAP did for us in 2022 to show what is in the residual waste. So basically, we brought in a lorry load of waste, tipped it up in the shed, and they seem to like getting on with it. Not the most enjoyable job, but they basically routed through all this on trestle tables and pulled out exactly what was in the purple bags and black bin. So at the moment, there's 55% in that bin we can't do anything with. That has to go to energy from waste at the moment. However, 45% of that bin could have been recycled. Now, 31% could have been recycled really easily at the curbside with no effort at all, really, on the part of the householder. They just needed to use their caddy or put the various things into the boxes. Now, a lot of it, there is, people, for whatever reason, haven't got time, maybe, if we're being nice about it, to wash things out before they put them in there, or they've eaten half a takeaway and don't want to bother putting the food into the food bin and the carton into the other bin. Now, in terms of keeping it for 3 weeks, this is always the thing, isn't it? Well, you can't keep a smelly bin for 3 weeks. Well, it shouldn't be smelly because you've got all the stuff out that is going to cause problems. Now, there's other stuff there's 3% garden waste. We do offer a service now. It is paid for, but it is still a curbside collection service. But then there's other stuff that could go to the household, I should say recycling centre, and will on future slides. So it just shows that, and there's, and hopefully I've got quite a positive audience really here tonight. But we have the dreaded 4 weekly that gets mentioned, and that's just one of the options. But when you look at it purely from theoretical terms, if over a third of that bin is recyclable, there shouldn't be any problem at all going an extra week before it's collected, because as I always say, we offer a weekly service to all householders. And there's probably someone going to say now, well, you didn't come to us last bank holiday or something. And now that we do have those kind of issues, but basically we offer a weekly service for all recyclables, including food, and all that's left can go into the wheeled bin. But yes, we would have to look at how we would cope with certain, there's the things like the nappies and incontinence waste, absorbent hygiene products, which again, we can offer bigger capacity for things like that, big families. We can work around that, but most people, if they got that stuff out of that bin, would easily be able to go for longer without a collection. And just in terms of sort of some figures around that as well, if we got everything out of that, which would be really, really challenging, But say we did, that's 4,700 extra tonnes that would be saved from going to an incinerator or energy from waste plant and would be recycled. In really rough terms, because the prices vary all the time, but in terms of the savings in disposal costs and the additional income that we get for recyclables, even for food, there's a cost for processing food, but it's about a third the cost of energy from waste. We would save £700,000 a year for the council. And when we're in the dreadful state we are, well, all councils are, that's, we are burning money essentially. So, and it's just crazy, isn't it? Okay, so the five main key aims of the strategy: reduce, reuse, repair. That's at the top of the hierarchy, so that's where we really want to focus our efforts wherever we can. The next thing is recycling, getting as much out of that bin as we possibly can. And like I said, that is income for the authority as well as saving on the disposal. Increase recycling and reuse rates at HRCs, which is what we've done with the new contracts, which, as you're probably aware, there's a new contract for all 5 sites. The one in Welshpool is still operated by Potters under a separate new contract, and the other ones are operated by Bryson, who are a not-for-profit company who operate sites in the north. Awareness and enforcement, as well as getting people to recycle more, and there is the potential to do enforcement at the curbside. Again, awareness is where we want to go with that before we go anywhere near enforcement. We don't want to take that route, but it's also tackling the illegal activities like fly tipping and making sure we clamp down on those. Now, it's often said that whenever something new is introduced, everyone's going to fly tip. You've probably seen it all about the latest things about the HRCs and the booking, and everyone's going to start fly tipping. They haven't, because fly tipping is an illegal activity, and people don't just turn into criminals overnight because we've made it different for them, should I say. I mean, when we said it about, when we're going through weekly, it's like, look at this major fly tip. That's the council's fault. And there's like a settee and a chest of drawers. Now, when did they ever fit in a wheeled bin? And this is the kind of thing we get. I mean, another thing I always say is, people aren't criminals. You don't arrive at Tesco's at 10 past 10 because you got there a bit late for your milk and pick up a shopping trolley and wang it through the window to get it, do you? I mean, people aren't like that. And in a lot of ways, almost condones fly tipping by suggesting that it's the council's fault if people do. It was very interesting looking at what's been going on in Birmingham, and I do sympathise for my colleagues over there. But you look at the piles of rubbish that are out there, and then you'd see a dust cart there waiting for people to take their black bags, and there'd be a couple of blokes running along with a mattress. It's like they were never collected at the curbside, but people, they will take advantage of these things. And of course, the infrastructure, develop and maintain infrastructure, which I've touched on already. Okay, so we've been to a public engagement exercise on this. We did it, it was 12 weeks from the 10th of January to the 4th of April, and we've had feedback from residents, councillors, partner organisations, Powys workplaces, and this will be incorporated into the final strategy, which we're hoping to get to Cabinet in the next few months, and that will then be our document that we're working towards. I mean, the main reasons were to raise awareness amongst the public. I mean, like I said, it's more of an engagement than a consultation. We're not pretending it's a major consultation and everything's going to change as a result of this, because there are parameters we have to work to. And we wanted to ensure stakeholders are aware of those challenges and the constraints that we do face. But it will, influence service delivery. So we have to do things like, sorting out the residual waste. We can see what the people's issues are, why they think they would struggle. There's a lot of support for things as well, saying, yeah, no problem, I could go 6 weeks we've had on that's come back from the engagement exercise as well. So it's mostly positive, really. I mean, we did, of course, do it just as all the furore happened about the household recycling centre booking system, which did mean that we had quite a few comments about that. But on the whole, most people that have engaged with it have done so positively, which is really positive. Okay, I think that's it. So I'll stop. How do I stop sharing? Well, have I stopped sharing?
And no, you're still sharing at the moment.
Okay, there we go. Is that stopped?
Right. Okay. So,
So, but sorry, now I was going to go on and touch on the various things on your list, if that's okay, but I haven't
okay,
got any
lovely. Thank you.
slides for it. So I'll just go through that. So I think, yeah, let me just pick up your agenda. So, okay, we'll start with the most controversial, perhaps, which is the recent changes to the household recycling centres, which are the booking systems and the DIY charging. Now, these have been implemented for a number of reasons. In the first instance, yes, there is a cost saving from that, and that was put in the budget last year as a based on what has happened at other authorities who've done this. There was about a £400,000 saving that the authority would realise. Now, it was then put into the tender documents for the contract, which went out last July. So what has come back is basically about £400,000 cheaper than it would have been. In reality, it had gone up because we hadn't done a tender for 10 years or so. But it's a very much an open book contract, both with Brysons and Potters. And there is profit share in there as well. Now, we're not expecting to make lots of money out of it as a council, but what it does demonstrate is that we can demonstrate value for money out of the contracts by having that, because if they do make a killing on a particular item, that money will come back to us. So it is a very different type of contract. The booking system is something that it's been in place for a lot of authorities. It was a new thing during COVID, because when all the sites reopened, it was how they could control the flow of people coming through the site. Now, I was pretty skeptical, I must admit, at the time. We didn't do it in Powys because they weren't as busy as sites like in Cardiff and Swansea. So we didn't do it then. In some ways, I wish that we had, because the authorities that did found that people actually really liked it. At the time, they were just grateful to get back into the sites because they were closed for several months. But when they did get used to the booking system, they just didn't want to let it go because it's so convenient. People can book, you just turn up, it's much quieter. You get the help from the site staff to help you sort out your waste, so it is all recycled. And it flattens out the amount of visitors that we have over the week. And there were some sites, like particularly in the south at Lower Cumtuck and Ustergunlus, which they'd be queuing. I don't know if anyone knows the site, but all the way around the industrial estate back down to the main road that goes down to Swansea. So there were a lot of queues. I mean, we've had before it, of course, we had a major issue that Shropshire decided to U-turn on their particular one. It had only been in place for 6 months, and it was I've had long conversations with the officers there, and they were pretty happy with how it was going, to be honest. People claim that fly tipping had increased, but fly tipping goes up and down. And if you look at the statistics for fly tipping over 5 years or more, it's just doing this all the time, and it's really hard to actually put it to anything really. So well, like I say, it was a political thing. There was an election, wasn't there? So people were looking for things for that. It didn't help us at all because it was actually going really well. Our promotions were going great. Then suddenly that happened and it just exploded really. And very much in the north, because it being neighbouring Shropshire, and we were suddenly battling a lot of very, very negative publicity. And I will be honest, I'm not a great social media user. Well, I don't use it at all personally. I can see the benefit of it, but I was quite surprised how influential it could be in terms of the amount of stuff we were trying to get out to say. We were trying to dispel all the myths, but every time we put something out, it just came back like an absolute tidal wave of stuff coming back, and some of it really wasn't very pleasant either. But things, they take a life of their own. To be honest, now that it's in, we've had overwhelmingly positive feedback. We've had a few where people may have struggled to get bookings on the day, but the idea is, like with anything else, you'd book a few days in advance if you can. But we have taken some feedback on that, and we've been talking to our contractors this week, and they've agreed to increase the number of people that are allowed every 10 minutes to book. So that should help things a bit on that front, and we'll have to monitor it over time. We've got such good data from this now. We know when people are coming and all that kind of stuff, so we can really look at it and see what has happened. But I don't know if anyone's had any experience of it, but generally people who've been and used it have found it great. The people who haven't are still not convinced, and there's a few people who haven't been able to get a booking. But if on a Sunday morning you just decide at 11 o'clock you want to go, the chances are, particularly in summer, you might struggle. But if you'd have booked on the Saturday for the Sunday, you'd have been fine. But we need to see how it all goes, in terms of how it works. What it does do is means that the site can be operated so much better in terms of helping people out. We have had a couple of things where people have gone past and say, well, I couldn't book, and then the site, there was nobody on it. Now that will happen occasionally, or because if they're allowed 10 minutes. Well, you're not allowed 10 minutes. That is kind of what we've thought is the booking time. So if people come in and they take 2 minutes and they're gone, which is what an awful lot of people do, the rest of that 10 minutes is going to be quite quiet. But then we might have someone else who might take quarter of an hour. Now, we don't kick anyone off after 10 minutes. So it's balancing it out, and this is what we're doing at the moment, and we can change it quite easily on the system to change the number of booking slots. So we're in the early stages. We had rough ideas of how many people use the site. It wasn't that scientific. We've just done a few gate counts, and there's enough bookings to go around. It's just spread out more, and that's the idea, really, to make it a much more user-friendly experience. It'll take time to bed in, but I think that there's now 12 of the 22 authorities in Wales have a booking system. A lot of places in England as well. Shropshire's not a great example because they only did it for 6 months. But other places have been doing it for years and years and years now, and have just found it so successful. And if you ever look at some of their sites and the comments, you get the occasion, well, no, I couldn't book. But there's loads of people come back and said, it was great. We could, we booked, we went, we got rid of our stuff. We didn't waste 3 hours queuing. We were in and out within half an hour. Touching on the DIY thing, to be fair, yes, no one likes to have to pay for things. But again, there was a lot of misinformation about that, and you're going to get charged for this, and this. And if you look on the website, you'll see that the charges aren't there really for all that many things. It's if you're doing a big job at home, why is it up to the council to pay to get rid of all of that stuff? Or if you've had your windows replaced by a glazier, who then just leaves them all with you, why should the council pay for that? It's not household waste. It might have come from a house, but it's not household waste. That is construction and demolition waste. And we don't have to accept it for free. Now, we'll accept small amounts. So if you come in with just a bag of wood, fine. If you come out with a complete decking, then we're not going to be able to take that for nothing. So there are charges for that. Still hugely cheaper than using a skip, which is what people should do, really. And it is literally to cover the costs, which is why there are some things there isn't a cost for. So if you want to bring in a radiator, fine, it's got scrap value. And if someone says, oh, well, you're making money out of it, well, okay, you can take that to a scrapper yourself. But we don't make money out of recyclable materials at all overall. Some things you get an income for, the vast majority there is a cost to recycle, and that is all part of the amount we spend on the household recycling centres. I mean, it's upwards of like 3 million a year, the contract costs to run those sites. It's out to tender, so we've got the best value we possibly could. We looked at operating them ourselves in-house, but that was certainly no cheaper. And I think we've now got 2 very good contracts. They'll take time to bed in, but so far they've been running well, and we just need to work through some of the the issues around the amount of booking slots and things like that. To move on then to the workplace recycling regs.
Actually, is it worth, because there's quite a few interesting or useful comments in the chat. Can I
Sorry, I
just go through
haven't
some of
looked.
those on the
Yeah,
booking
by
system
all
and so on
means.
before we move on to the commercial
Okay.
waste?
Yeah.
So there was a comment from Laura about the fact that how well people recycle is linked to sort of wider social issues, and if things are going well, then they're likely to recycle more, and that I think that's probably a very valid point. Then, well, Alison's just made a point about some missing collections again. I guess they go up and down, and I've had other people comment about there being a few missing collections recently. Is there something recent that is causing that, Ashley?
Yes. In the north, it's lack of staff. We are having real issues with recruiting drivers. We are trying everywhere. We've got 5 vacancies for drivers in the north. If for some reason it's worse in the north than the mid and the south, and I think that's a lot to do with there being far more opportunities for people to go and work elsewhere. The northern councils have said it's the same for them. They're struggling to get drivers. So we're pulling people from all over the place, really, to just try and get the rounds out. Bank holidays are always a problem. We rely on the goodwill of the staff, and last year it was pretty good because we had a full complement of staff. But of course, if you're 5 drivers down and then you're trying to get people to come in, which is basically they lose their bank holiday by working, there's a debate to be had about contractual things and all the rest of it. But people like to have a bank holiday off, and the drivers and loaders are no different. So yes, we had quite a few problems. We've also had a few issues with vehicles. It's just sort of been a perfect storm, really. And I know that doesn't help at all in terms of getting the message out. We're saying, come on, everyone, recycle, and then we don't pick it up. Really doesn't help. But yes, it is more of an issue in the north. We are looking to address that. We've in touch with agencies, all sorts, to try and get staff in, but it is a real challenge. So if anyone's got a HTV and fancies a job, please apply on our website now.
Okay.
We'll interview you in the morning.
Thanks,
Okay.
Ashley. So next comment is also from Alison, not helped by the confusion of what's DIY waste and what isn't, and a media post from PCC. Do you want to expand on that, Alison? I'm not quite sure what media post you're referring to there.
Yeah. Well, I think most of us would understand that. I mean, what the wording on the media post was, if you're moving house and you wouldn't be taking it with you, it's part of the house and therefore it's DIY. So if it's your garden fence or if it's your bathroom suite, that's DIY. The concern, and this is particularly it happened in Welshpool, was somebody took some old garden furniture, that rattan furniture. It was, well, in fact, all it was a table, and it had got, as they all do, a sheet of glass on top of the rattan in the middle of the coffee table. So he recycled the coffee table, went to recycle the glass, and they said, oh no, that's DIY.
Okay,
So,
well, they shouldn't have done.
no, they shouldn't. He brought it home and he said, I'm not paying for that. I've brought it home. Now, the thing is that I'm concerned with that case. I'm concerned that this gets out. We need to be clear what recycling is. And I think that the staff there.
So that's Welshpool, is it?
Yes. The other thing is to go back to the collecting the recycling. My particular concern is it's all right if you've got a garden to put your boxes in and you've got a reasonably sized house. But for many people in our towns, they live in small terraced houses with no garden and having recycling collections that are not then done really does put a strain. In all honesty, where can they put these things? There is nowhere, and we don't want them to put it in the bin. We don't want them to walk into town and shove it in the bins in town, which they do. So those recycling collections, particularly on those sort of roads where the houses are smaller and they've got nowhere to store, is really essential.
Yeah, okay, I completely take that on board. I agree. I mean, just to go back to the DIY stuff, it's always a really difficult one to define that, because DIY waste doesn't exist. It's not a category of waste. It's just we're trying to say, if you do a do-it-yourself job, like, I don't know, you take down a garden fence, there's a charge for that. That table, they should have taken that. That's not DIY waste. No. That's fine. It's like a mirror. They should take that. Okay, it's glass. So it's just, I don't know how long ago that was, but it's the staff just getting used to
the site. Scheme, and presumably there will be a period of.
But if you go on the website, there's a really clear list of what isn't.
Yes.
And that media post, that was our comms people saying, "Oh, we've seen this somewhere else," and it was quite a good way of saying that if you've got to take it off the wall, it is not something you would get rid of on a day-to-day
Yeah.
basis. So it was
Yeah.
to try and simplify it, but with every single one, it's like,
Yes.
but what about this? There's an exception here and there's an exception here. So it was an impossible task, and we tried every time, please look at the website, because it's all
Yes.
listed out there, and that
Yes.
makes it really clear. And most people, when they looked, it's like, oh, okay, well, there's not actually that much you do have to pay for. So it's not that big an issue. But yes, we do need to make sure that the staff are trained to know exactly what is and isn't.
I think that's where the difficulty is. And the point is that, this person isn't somebody that's going to argue the toss with the staff. He just said, oh, I'll bring it home then. But the point is that if the staff have got the training, well, I don't see we've got a problem. And I did think actually the media post was useful because it did explain it simply. The staff need to know that.
Absolutely, and they should do. So I'm a bit disappointed they don't really, but okay, we can raise that with them. In terms of the curbside collections, all I can do is apologise, really. We have had real problems with having enough staff.
Yeah.
It is far from ideal. We've been trying to catch up. We do prioritise the residual, so people don't wait any longer than 3 weeks, and then we will collect the following week. And the longest will be 2 weeks and a day, because sometimes when they have to do a double collection, they can't fit it all on the vehicle, so they have to catch up the following day. Far from ideal, and we're trying to avoid that as much as we can. The next bank holiday, I'm confident, I'm crossing all my fingers, that we will have enough people. We've had to borrow people from highways and all sorts. I've even offered to go and load myself on a lorry if required, and we will do our best to collect that, and if not, just move it on a day. So yeah, I understand it's not what we want to be doing at all, because like I said, we're trying to get people to recycle and then we're not turning up. If it's any consolation, mine sat outside here today because the lorry broke down, so they haven't visited me today. They are coming tomorrow, they tell me, and it's a really good crew and they'll work late to do it. But we don't have an unlimited amount of vehicles. Vehicles cost a lot of money to stand around. So if one's in for MOT and one breaks down, it causes all sorts of issues. So there's lots of good reasons. It certainly isn't for the want of trying, I can assure you.
I mean, I think what I'm asking is if there is a way to prioritise those roads where we know that people have an issue about storage, I think we would all find that acceptable. We understand that there are issues that you're trying to overcome.
Okay, thanks very much, Alison. So next comment is Liz asking, are all the recycled materials processed in the UK, or are they sort of shipped globally? Do we know?
The vast majority are processed in the UK. There's things here and there which, it's a global market, will go abroad, but hardly anything. That can all be... Sorry, go on.
Go on. Well, presumably, is that something that is Bryson's or Potter's that would be in control of that rather than Powys Council, or would that be controlled by the contract?
No, what goes to a HRC would be Bryson's or Potter's, but all the stuff we collect at the curbside, we basically sell that to, or get the best deal for that we possibly can. But the vast majority is processed in the UK. The vast majority, very little is odd little things that may 3 layers down the road. It's not going to end up on a beach in Turkey, I can assure you of that. And if you want to look at it, like I said, if you go on the NRW website, waste data flow, it's like all one word. You can look at Powys and you can find out where every single kilogram goes. And we also have on our website all the destinations for everything.
Okay, are you happy with that, Liz? I assume you are. So the next comment was from... Oh, do you want to come in, Liz?
Yes. I'm pleased to hear that. I do think it's very important, and I do think David Selby's follow-on question is very relevant, really, about the ethical and environmental aspect of where they're recycled.
Right, okay. Yes,
well,
so...
as most of it's in the UK, I'm pretty confident that it is. I mean, I can't guarantee every last kilogram, but like I said, the vast majority is. If it was in the day, I would be sending a message to my data man telling me to tell me exactly how much does go outside of the UK, and I'm pretty sure the last time I asked, it was practically nil.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. So yeah, Lucy had put a question about concern about the steps up to the skips and people struggling to get up those.
Yeah,
Do you want to
that
qualify that any more, Lucy, or what's your
I'm happy to address that because it's something we get a lot. Is steps at the site are never popular. At all the sites, with the exception of Ustergunless, because it's split level, have steps. Welshpool hasn't previously because Potters used the low skips because they didn't have so far to take it and bulked it up in their transfer station next door. Now that they've lost the rest of the contracts, they've got various steps from the other sites, and it is much more efficient for them to use the higher skips so that they can get much more in them, so they don't have to empty them as often, which is actually good for the carbon footprint because logistically it means less trips. But yeah, people aren't very keen on them. But again, this is one of the major advantages of the booking system is that ask for assistance and they've got time to help you. And if they're not helping, I want to know because we'll talk to them about it. But if anyone's in any way struggling with the steps, that's what the site attendants are there for, to help people with that.
do you want to add anything to that, Lucy?
Yeah, I think we need to make that really clear because as I mentioned, there was several. It was more than one person. I think there were three different people who all said that they'd had concerns and struggled with loads when they were trying to load the skips, and particularly concerned about how it might be in the winter when the steps might be slippery.
They shouldn't be slippery because they're
No,
designed to have
exactly.
light stuff on. So they are designed with health and safety in mind, very
Yeah.
much so. But again,
But
not ideal, but the vast majority of household recycling centres will have steps.
I think if we can make it clearer to people that they need to ask for help if they're in any way concerned, then that would be good.
Okay.
Thanks, Lucy. So, David, you'd got the question about how confident we are that things were being stored and processed properly. Do you want to add anything on that? Or was that answered sufficiently previously?
Yes. Sorry. Yeah, I'd say my concern is that, well, with plastics in particular, regardless of where they're being processed, or are they actually being treated properly in an environmentally sound manner, as opposed to being just burnt or dumped.
Absolutely.
One hears an awful lot of stories, of course, over years. So do you effectively audit what happens to the stuff?
Yes, we absolutely do. We have to. NRW are so strict on it in terms of the what we put in and say where it goes. I can guarantee there's nothing that we send for recycling that isn't recycled. The only thing is, occasionally there'll be some rejects. There always is from any process that may end up burned, but it's a minor amount. We're talking like 0.5%. So yes, we have to account for every single item that we take for recycling.
Well, that's very encouraging, and that applies to paper as well.
Absolutely, yeah, everything.
I mean, have you got? I wondered, is there still the sort of market for waste paper?
Yeah, paper's not too bad. Plastic's a bit harder. Textiles is the really challenging one at the moment. A lot to do with Temu and Shein and all those kind of people flooding the market with cheap stuff, so people don't want the old textiles. So that's a bit of a challenge. But the markets go up and down a lot, and we do. Working again with Welsh Government and RAP, change the contracts regularly so we get the best income possible for the material. So it's a moving feast, that one. But yeah, you can. I can't remember the link to the website for, like, if you put Wales recycling, you'll find out where everything goes in Wales. And we also have lists on our website, and if you really want the detail, go to Waste Data Flow on the NRW website.
Well, I think that's very encouraging. I've got a couple more questions, but there's other people probably waiting. Jeremy?
Okay, well, should we try and take them at the end if we've got time? Thanks, David. So, yeah, Rolly asks about if you don't have access to the online booking system.
You can do it by phone, which I appreciate you can't on a Saturday morning, but you can ring in and they will do it for you. Otherwise, we would advise if you know someone who's able to do it on your behalf. I think it's something like 96% of bookings are online, and that's standard across all other authorities that have got these in place. It's very, very simple to do online, which I appreciate. If you don't have a phone or a computer, you still can't do it. But yeah, okay, you have to be a little bit more organised and do it in the week. But our help desk do take bookings.
Okay. You happy with that, Rolly? We've gone through all the questions on chat. David, do you want to put any extra questions in before Ashley moves on to the talk about the commercial waste? David?
Oh, oh yeah. Sorry. Yes, you got room for my question.
Yes, go ahead.
Right. Try and make it quick. This is putting my Landry Dodd Repair Cafe hat on, in particular. What are the possibilities that the waste sort of separation of good reusable stuff, as happens at Newtown with the Waste Not Circular Economy project, whereby furniture, household items, remarkable range of stuff that's would otherwise end up in landfill is intercepted at the recycling centre and then sold or otherwise rehomed through the organisation. Is there a possibility that that might be rolled out to Landrindod and some of the other recycling centres?
Well, it's not a possibility, it's contractual. They have to do that. They've got to get 80% recycling, and 5% of that, or the 5 percentage points of that, has to be reuse. So they're already doing that, taking it off site. Now, Potters have done it for years up at Welshpool, and they're still using Circular Economy Mid Wales. But Brighton's are very, very keen on reuse. In fact, one of their strap lines is choose to reuse, and they do intercept people at the gate and take stuff off them, and they actually get, sell it in all sorts of places. They actually use eBay for good stuff. They have reused roadshows and all sorts. So they've only just started. I mean, it started at the beginning of April, that contract. So they've got quite a bit of settling in to do. But yes, the focus will be very much on reuse. So it's difficult to fit a shop in at the Landrindod side. I don't know if you know it, but it's not very big. But certainly at Brecon and Ustergunlas, there's already a building there ready to go. So we will be rolling it out to all the other sites, and stuff will be collected at Landrindod to go elsewhere. So yes, that's definitely happening.
Right, that's very good. Have I got time for another very quick one?
Go on, very quick one then, David.
Okay, right. On a recent visit to Melbourne, Australia, I discovered that on certain dates each year, residents are allowed to put stuff out on the pavement for the council to collect. Now, this can be, furniture, garden waste, absolutely anything. And so it's a very open kind of thing. It's not sort of booking and paying for special collections and things. And at the same time, there's a custom that people go around and pick things that might be useful to them. So it serves a dual purpose of immediate sort of reuse and hopefully recycling. Could you contemplate something like that on an occasional basis?
I think it
I'll
happens in
be
Germany
honest.
as well, like that.
Yeah, I think it would be quite challenging to do. I mean, you probably could do it in certain areas, I suppose, but that would take some management. And what you do with all the stuff that you can't do anything with, that's the issue, because people are just going to take it all back into their houses. I don't know. Yeah, it's also a cost of doing things. We're very much up against it in terms of our financial challenges. And if we do that and you end up, it's a bit like if you put a skip somewhere on a housing estate for a day, it fills up very, very quickly with all sorts of stuff. And of course, we then foot the bill of getting rid of it. So I can see that can work. Again, it's a culture thing, isn't it? About how those communities work together, because I think it would be quite challenging, if I'm honest.
Well,
in this country.
Thought.
Thank you.
Right, we better move on, otherwise, because time is moving on. So yeah, that's gone through all those questions there. Do you want to continue now with where you left off, Ashley, please?
Okay. Yeah, I was going to talk about the workplace recycling regulations, and what these are is the Welsh Government has basically made it law that all businesses have to recycle the waste they produce, and basically in the same way that households do. So it's exactly the same materials. There is like a de minimis on food, and like I said, it's been something that NRW have been enforcing. Technically, if you run a shop and you put a tin can in with residual waste, you are breaking the law. Not only that, but the council or any other collector, by picking that up, are also breaking the law. Now, in reality, that is never going to happen because we'd be doing it every day. But it has made a big difference in terms of what businesses are doing. The recycling rate from businesses has rocketed since this has come in. We were in a really good position to be able to do it because we've always collected in that way, and it's actually helped us really, because a lot of the sort of the private contractors collect it mixed, and it's then taken away and they sort it out, and they've been undercutting the council as a result of that. Now, with the new legislation, they legally can't do that because you have to separate it out. So you can't just put it all into one bin and get it taken away and they say it's recycled. It does have to be put out separately. It has been a challenge for lots of authorities. Like I said, we were in a better position because we already provided that service. But what we did do was switch an awful lot of residual customers to recycling customers. And trade always brought down our recycling figures, but now it's up at the same kind of level, which is kind of like 60% at the curbside. So it has made a huge difference. There are a lot of challenges, and I know close to your heart, Jeremy, is the events, which is always going to be difficult unless you've got someone very keen on site to sort out those materials. Now, the big events, the sort of the Royal Welsh Show, which is a council, to be honest, we don't particularly want to get involved with that. We've done them previously, and it's just we're not geared up to do it. It needs like a big group of volunteers who are going around manning the bins, making sure the right thing goes in each of them. So there are other organisations who are far better placed to do that than ourselves. There are all the small events that go on, which are challenging. And I was in a meeting with NRW only last week, actually, and I raised the issue of how do we get around the small events. And they were saying about things like Green Man and all the rest of it. I said, to be honest, I'm not worried about those because we wouldn't get involved. But as a council, we're also the collector of last resort. So if any business wants a service and no one else is prepared to provide it, we have no option but to provide that service. And we try to do this for events, but our biggest problem is having the resource. So it is down to whoever's running that event to make sure that those bins are used properly. Now, some of the things NRW and RAP have come up with guidance on this, and one of the things they were saying is, particularly like young farmers events, which is we get a lot of those, is like they'd encourage, like groups of the young farmers, like do some signage and all this kind of thing to actually get more proactively involved at the event stage. Like I said, as a council, we can provide the bins, we can drop them off on a Friday, pick them up on a Monday, and hopefully we get some recycling out of it. It's very hard to do. Schools is another one that's causing major problems because, of course, they've got all the litter bins in their playgrounds and having all that sorted. So that's another particular area they're struggling with. Again, it's also, you've seen in the news that they're introducing it in England now, which is going to be quite a challenge as part of their simpler recycling. So once again, Wales are leading the way on this. And it is a challenge. One of the problems we've had is in like the town centres where there's been small shops which haven't got much space for things, and now we are trying to be as flexible as we can, and we can with really small businesses offer for example, I use an example of an estate agent. How much waste are they really going to produce? Paper, probably. And we can provide just a blue reusable sack for paper, and then we would suggest, which is for card as well, and then we would suggest that if someone's bringing in a can of Coke, because this is where the definition of what's commercial waste and what's household is a bit blurred. Often it's exactly the same thing. But if I work in an estate agent and I bring in a can of Coke, if I drink that at my desk, if I then walk out and take it home, it's residual waste. It's domestic waste. But if I put it in the bin in the office, it's commercial waste. So, and I've cleared this with Welsh Government. I said, well, if you're producing that small amount, just get your staff to take it home with them. And if you just need something for paper, we'll give you a paper bag, and the residual, we can just pick up what's left in the green trade sacks that we provide. So we can provide different solutions for different places. But this is something that, I mean, we had a bit of criticism about it, and I've had to say, well, it's Welsh Government have implemented this, it's their legislation, but it's something that we're having to implement, like all the other commercial operators as well. So that's just kind of a quick rundown of the workplace recycling regs. It has made a difference to recycling considerably for us. So we've actually reduced the number of residual lorries we have and increased recycling on the trade. So whereas we used to have like 2 residual and 1 recycling lorry, we've now got 1 residual and 4 recycling vehicles on the trade collection. So it has made a big difference.
Do you get the impression that, as you know, and you've mentioned, I'm very keen on the event recycling. Do you get the impression that most community events, sort of village shows and so on, they are taking this on board, or is the message not getting through that events should be recycling?
Well, the ones that come to us if they request a service, again, this is something that's sort of promoted by NRW rather than the council. So I think there's an awful lot still going under the radar, I'm sure. Or just getting a skip in or whatever they do. I mean, there's lots of these small events that go on, isn't there? So yeah, it's an ongoing thing. And I mean, we've just finished year 1 of it, which has been relatively successful, but it's quite a thing to implement, to be honest. So, and it's, there's all discussions about, any outdoor thing where people just chuck things into bins. How do you control what they do? Particularly at some events as they go on, earlier in the day, they might be great, but by 11 o'clock at night, it's probably more of a challenge.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm just going to run through a few of the comments and questions from the chat again. So yeah, Laura says she's struggling to find that link you mentioned about the waste data flows. So if you can give us a web link at some stage on that. Sally mentions, does the plastic get made into polyester, which then increases the microfiber problem? Do we know what our plastic goes to be used for, or not?
I couldn't tell you now. I mean, I mean, most of it is like, it depends what it is, isn't it? The better quality stuff. So if it's like PET or the different types, they will try and be put back into what they originally were. But yeah, plastic is quite a challenge to recycle, so I couldn't honestly tell you where it entered, but I know I do understand your point about the polyester.
Okay. Fiona mentions, well, do you want to come in, Fiona, and explain your question, because it's quite a long one?
So yes, for all the positives that we've seen from the workplace recycling rules, one of our negatives that we've come up against in Brecon, where we've got lots of small streets, as I'm sure we all have, is lots and lots of different types of bins, all being collected on different days by different organisations, lots of clutter on the streets. So we've been undertaking a project with businesses to try to come to a solution for some of these issues. We're still working our way through it. We've been supported by Keep Wales Tidy, and where we're at the moment is trying to develop a matrix about who's got what, who can use one person's recycling for something else, and how can we make that happen. So we're trying to work out exactly what we've got, what people need, and try and come up with some central storage areas or some screening so the bins don't look so ugly, that kind of thing. But it's quite a big piece of work, actually, but it's been very interesting and well supported.
Now, I do understand that if you do have lots of bins, it can be quite a challenge. And this is why we've offered this thing for really small businesses that, here's a foldable bag that you can use for your cardboard and paper, because you're not going to be producing that much. I mean, in theory, it shouldn't be any different, because if people were chucking their waste out, it may have been in one residual bin, but that residual bin should now be a lot smaller, because certainly from our point of view, we'll provide a range of different size bins. So we'd actually say to someone, right, well, you don't need that 240 or 360 residual bin, you can go to a 120 or something like that, which takes up a lot less space, and they get charged less as well. But yeah, there is always going to be the problem in town centres of storage of those bins. And of course, us from a waste and recycling department don't really have control about what the third parties, so the Biffers, the Thomases, and people like that down in Brecon, because that is an arrangement completely outside of what we do. Although I have an awareness enforcement manager, James Thompson, some of you probably know him, that will look at issues where bins are like on the pavement and attracting other stuff and all that kind of thing. But yeah, it is quite a challenge, I appreciate.
Okay, thanks, Fiona. That's an interesting comment. Right, Alison's made a point, and this is one that is fairly close to my heart too, about food waste, and in particular sort of causing contaminated waste in some of the bins. And this is an issue we have with the shows that we do, where you've got food being thrown away on paper plates, and what bin do they go in, and how can we process that sort of food waste? I know I've bent your ear about this before, actually, but it's...
Well, a paper plate, if it's clean at the end of it, can go with paper. If not, it goes in residual. But the food should go into the food waste bin.
Now, how you train people to
absolutely
separate them. I don't know whether you want to comment on this, Alison. You've put the question there. It's is it really feasible to train people to scrape food off in one bin and put the plate in another bin? It's
not an event, probably, no, unless they're so used to doing it. I mean, we try to get people to do this at County Hall, and it's hard enough there, and and we've got all the separate bins out. But technically, yes, if you've got a paper plate, you should scoop the food into the food waste bin. If that's relatively clean, that can go in with the paper. But if it's all greasy, that's just got to go in residual anyway.
Yes. It's at events. This is where events become an impossibility, because everything in the paper or in anything else becomes contaminated by the food or drink that's left on it.
Absolutely.
And our food processing can't process that. Whereas if in Shropshire, I think they do have, they can treat food waste in a way that can cope with compostable material being in there as well.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
It is, but they do a lot less. Just to compare to Shropshire on about 50% recycling rate, which is like lower than the lowest recycler in Wales. So how much they're actually getting from that, I don't know. But yes, because we use anaerobic digestion, it is difficult. The stuff that is so-called compostable doesn't. And I don't think a lot of it does in even compost process, because it takes an awful long time. It's like compostable bags, which, I mean, being honest, the bags that we use for our food waste caddies now aren't compostable. They're not biodegradable, because they were pulled out anyway before it was processed at the anaerobic digestion plant, and then they were sent for energy from waste. So we're not pulling the wool over anybody's eyes with that. The plastic ones cost half the amount, and they go to exactly the same place as the biodegradable ones did. So there's absolutely no point in doing it, and we save the council about £40,000 a year. So there's a lot of greenwashing, really, they call it, isn't it, of some of the stuff that, oh yeah, this is recyclable, yeah, or compostable. Yeah, if left in bright sunshine for 10 years, it might be. But so technically it may be, but in reality, it causes a real problem for the industry.
Okay. It still does mean that at the moment there's an unsolved problem, which is that after an event, if you've got a bin full of a mixture of paper plates and food, what do you do with it?
Well, it'll end up going for residual, and if we're collecting, we'd have to charge it that. It does get energy from waste. It's not completely all is lost, but no, it is a real problem. And every meeting I'm in with NRW, I raise events, because it's like, how is this supposed to work? A bit like schools, all the litter bins they have in their playgrounds, are they going to be sorted? No, of course they're not. So having real problems with that. But the spirit of it has made a big difference, and I think that is quite important. It was never going to be perfect, because I said technically, if as a council we pick up a residual bin and it's got a Coke can in it, we're breaking the law. But no one's going to ever enforce that. So.
Okay, thanks, Alison. Okay, well, and there's just a comment from Fiona about what Brecon Council sort everything by hand from their events, which is very good to hear. Thank you, thank you,
Cheers,
Fiona. Okay, that's the end of the questions in chat. So, Ashley, do you want to resume where you left off again?
Where are we on to
I think
now?
we were on
I said we were going to
either
be here all night.
yeah.
But, hey, we'll have to get a glass of wine, surely. Extended producer responsibility. Right now, things start to get really complicated now. Now, it's actually called PEPR, which is Packaging Extended Producer Responsibility. And this is something that people have been crying out for years and years, and we get it all the time. Well, the supermarkets produce it. It's up to them to reduce the packaging. You know, why should councils have to deal with it and all the rest of it? And it's absolutely right. Well, we're actually now at a position where the producer will be paying for this material. So effectively, and this is the most complicated thing I think I've ever dealt with, and I've been quite closely involved with my work with people like DEFRA and stuff, and working groups to try and get this off the ground. But there's some very powerful people in industry out there who really want to reduce their costs as much as possible, and suddenly they're being landed a great big bill to pay councils, quite a lot of it, to actually recycle the material that they put on the market. So from the producer's point of view, they will produce all their products in various packaging, and they will then have to pay into it's called PAC UK. It's just like a producer responsibility organisation. They will have to pay into that based on what they put on the market and how recyclable it is. So there's this thing called a RAM, which is a recycling assessment methodology, and every single type of packaging goes through that process, so they decide how easy it is to recycle. If it's really easy to recycle, they pay less than something that's harder. The idea being they start to rethink in terms of what they're putting on the market. I mean, a lot of the criticism is this is just a tax on industry and they're just going to charge it back to the consumer, which they might, or they may change their behavior, and this is where we don't really know. Then a lot of basically authorities are being awarded quite a significant sums of money to then deal with this material, which of course is welcome, but it does mean that we're kind of much more, not at the beck and call is a bit too strong, but of the industry, and we're going to have to do things how they want us to do if we're going to get this money. And there's all this stuff around effective and efficiency, and if they can show that councils aren't effective and efficient, they can reduce the funding they give to us. But what has happened is the money that we're being paid is based on some very complicated formulas which we don't really understand, and local government are sort of kicking back a bit on this, saying, well, how has all this been calculated? But we've all been put into different brackets. So a rural authority, one that collects every 3 weeks, one that collects every fortnight, and all that kind of stuff. And then we're kind of given money on what they think it costs us to process the waste, which isn't always accurate. And you can then also see how it can be completely distorted, because if you just take everything for energy from waste, it costs more. Are you just going to get that back from the producers? But that's where this effectiveness comes in, and the efficiency, because they're going to say, hang on a minute, you're not recycling as much as you should. Now, once again, in Wales, we're way ahead of everyone else, because you can't really say we're not effective and efficient. Well, I'd certainly say we're efficient, as from earlier conversations and missing rounds that we've had, we're not always effective. And that is where this additional money will hopefully help us to be a bit more resilient, because we've had to make an awful lot of cuts in waste and recycling over the years. And this will hopefully help to offset some of that, so that we can potentially have newer vehicles, better vehicles, because we're being judged by industry, if you like. Now, of course, in reality, if money comes in for something, it'll get taken out the other end to use for other council functions, because there's so many different council functions that are crying out for money. So it is certainly not going to be, here you go, here's a great wad of cash that we can do what we want with at all. We've got to demonstrate that we're using it effectively to improve our services, get things better. And then we're going to have to go back and say what it's cost us, but there's always going to be a time lag on this going back. So we're probably next year or in 2 years' time going to be getting what it costs us now. And it makes it very difficult for local authorities to plan. We're all very grateful for the extra resources that should be coming our way. It's not all confirmed yet, but it's how that pans out with everything else. And there's an awful lot of discussions going on at the moment. But the general gist, and I hope everyone's still awake just about after all of that, but the general gist is that the producers do take responsibility, hence the phrase extended producer responsibility. So they think what they are putting on the market. So it should alter things really in terms of how we deal with things, but that could have quite an impact on our infrastructure as local authorities, because we're going to have to adapt to that. And one of the things we're going to have to look at is like plastic film, which, as I said earlier on, is quite a challenge. So it's a very complicated thing, is extended producer responsibility. The theory is absolutely great. The producer should pay. The negative is that they could just put that cost onto the consumer. So your can of Coke could be 10p more now because they've got to pay that to recycle this stuff. But yeah, and local authorities are almost, well, they're having to stand their ground in terms of how the producers are putting it from their point of view. And it's very much being done on a UK-wide level. But yeah, there's a lot of working groups going on, which the producers want one thing. They kind of assume local authorities are dreadfully inefficient and think that they should be doing it like this. At one particular meeting I had, one of the main people from one of the producers' organisations was saying, well, ideally, we want to be collecting it all ourselves. And this was just before Christmas, and he was saying, oh, he's got 2 weeks off over Christmas. And I did have to say, well, if you were collecting it all yourself, you wouldn't be having 2 weeks off, because I'm certainly not. And I don't think they realise how important local authorities are. And local authorities need to be saying, look, we've been doing this a long time. We are the experts. If the private sector could do it, they'd be doing it. If there was any money to be made in it, it wouldn't be left to local authorities. So it's really important to ensure we get a good deal out of it, so that it does help local authorities provide a really good service and also potentially free up money for other services. So it's a bit of a watch this space at the moment with extended producer responsibility, but it's one of the biggest things that's happened really in the waste industry. And it'll be interesting how it pans out.
But it should be discouraging producers from producing packaging that is fairly difficult to recycle, which is one of the main problems, that things that are hard to separate.
The theory of it's absolutely great,
Yeah.
but it is just so complex to actually put in place, and it has been delayed a few times as a result of that.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Ashley. So I don't see any comments at the moment on EPR in the chat. So I realise we are sort of getting quite late, and some people are having to leave. I think there's probably only one topic left that you've got to cover, though, Ashley, which is
the DRS.
DRS. So do you want to go quickly through that?
I'll quickly do. Another absolute mind bender is the deposit return scheme. The theory of it is, and I'm not going to suggest how old people are on this group, there's probably one or two of you that remember Corona bottles and collecting those and taking them back to the shop so you could get a packet of sweets or whatever you got, or a few more bottles. And of course, milk bottles. And people tend to look at that with very much rose-tinted spectacles, and it worked well because those bottles would go and be filled with the same thing that came in them in the first place, because they'd be taken back to the bottling plant. Things are very, very different now. There's so many different kind of containers, and we're talking of deposit things on all sorts of things. In fact, glass is the one that the UK, other than Wales, has decided not to do, again principally because the industry don't want to know, because it's just going to cause them so many problems. How it's going to pan out, I don't really know. I mean, this is my personal view, not the council's, by the way, but I think in somewhere like Wales, when we have such a high recycling rate, a deposit return scheme is in some ways a solution looking for a problem. We've got high recycling rates. In places where it's been very low, it has made a big difference. I don't think it's going to Wales. Litter is the one that's always quoted, and yes, potentially it could have an impact on that. But it's once again, how is this implemented? Because in Wales, if you're a good recycler, your stuff all goes in boxes, out for the curbside, away it goes. I doubt you've put any glass bottles into your wheel bin or metal or anything else. Now you suddenly put in this deposit return scheme, and you can't do that anymore. You've got to take, well, you can, but you're going to lose money on each and every container. You paid your 20p, 10p, whatever it might be. Now, to get that back, you've got to take it back to a reverse vending machine or a supermarket or wherever, put it all back into one of these things to get the credit back out for the money you've spent on it. Now, you were quite happily recycling at home. We were quite happy picking it up as a local authority, and everything was sorted. Now, some of you may have know that we did a trial down in Brecon. Well, certainly the Brecon people will know that we did a trial, and this was groundbreaking, for a digital trial where you could basically, there was an individual the QR code on each bottle, which in the trial had to be put on manually by all these people. And then the way it worked is that you, with your phone, you scanned your bottle, you scanned your box, you put it in, and you got your money back from that. And there was an element of trust that it was being recycled, but the group that did it did actually look through some of the stuff that picked up to check that it tallied, and it did, and it worked really well. But industry just doesn't want to go down that route because the cost of putting these QR codes, it has to be an individual one for every single different container, whereas a barcode is a standard one across that range. So that they're just not very keen on doing it at all. So it hasn't really got any further. But the other issue is, of course, for local authorities, is if all that material is taken out from the curbside, we're going to lose income, or the taxpayer is going to lose income, and we're also we've got the infrastructure to deal with it. That material is going to go somewhere else, so all these places have got to set up huge facilities to be able to deal with it. And this is one of the problems for Scotland when they abandoned theirs, which is to do with the internal market thing. I think Biffa, who were the contractor to set it up, are now suing the Scottish government on the basis of what they had to implement. So I think there's a consultation going to be happening shortly with the Welsh government, because Welsh government have held firm and say they want glass to be in it, and they really want to go down the reuse element of it. But it's quite difficult to see how that might work unless there's like bottle washing plants and all these kind of things. So the theory of it, and people like the Tidy Wales group are really into DRS, and I completely understand why, because it should reduce litter. But as for the rest of it, most of it is already happening. When we've looked through the residual bin, there's not that much in there that would have attracted a deposit. So it's difficult to see how it would help. That's very much my opinion, having worked on a lot of groups on it. And I think it's something that in a very low recycling place, I think it'll make a lot more difference in England than it will to Wales, because we're so much further down the road. So it's a bit of a watch this space at the moment. There's a consultation going on shortly that Welsh Government are doing to see how it's going to work. And there's a lot of unanswered questions. So once again, the theory is absolutely great. Putting into practice is one hell of a task to do, and this is why it keeps getting bumped down the road. There's also the issues of cross-border. I mean, anyone who lives in Hay will know that the supermarket is actually in England, Hay's supermarket, because it's in Cusop, which is just over the border. Now, there won't be a deposit on glass bottles there, but if you bought one in a corner shop in Hay, there will be. And how's that quite going to work? It's a lot of unanswered questions. So theoretically, it's great, but how it's going to actually work on the ground, I don't know, is my honest opinion.
Thanks, Ashley. Any questions that anyone's got on the deposit return scheme? I think I would tend to agree that if we have already very high recycling rates anyway, it's hard to argue. So for someone it's much more inconvenient for them to take it back to the supermarket than it is just to throw it in the recycling crate. Absolutely. And it is all about convenience these days. People do things because they're the easy thing to do. Okay, I don't see any questions now, and it is getting quite late. So thank you everyone for staying on so late. But it has been an extremely useful presentation, Ashley. So many thanks for going through all that and for
thank you very much
for this. So yeah, thank you all for coming along. It is being recorded, so we will be posting it on the our YouTube channel. But I think there are no more questions for the moment, so I think I can let you all go now. But yeah, thank you all very much for coming along, and thanks again, Ashley, for the
It's a
presentation.
pleasure.